Real talk, real impact, unfiltered and unapologetic. This is FemmeIcon.
Hello everybody, Assalamu alaikum. This is Mahvish Akhtar with another episode of FemmeIcon. And we are talking about free speech and expression, freedom of expression and free speech. This will be interesting. Hi Zila. Thank you for joining us. This will be interesting. We will wait a few minutes before we get into the topic. I like talking about this because I don't think a lot of us understand what is meant by this, because we get lost in the emotion of it, and we just get motivated by what we want to do, which is great. You know, we should definitely want to exercise our right to freedom. We should, freedom of speech and expression. We should definitely want to make a difference about whatever we want to do. But we should also understand how those rights in whatever culture, country, state, religion we are a part of, how those rights work within those things. Because just yesterday or the day before, one of my kids, we were talking about violence and weapons control and all of those things in terms of what the Joffrey says, freedom of speech is to protect what you hate. All right. And my we are going to right now, we will get into this conversation as well, because this is important what you're just saying, and this is what I'm actually the stories relates to that. But this is one of the reasons we're doing this. So my kid, he's young, he's 11 years old. He kind of made a comment which was kind of a joke, but kind of violent, because he's 11 years old, and these days we're watching movies and TV shows and video games where violence is being glorified, guns and all these things. So he made a comment, and my husband and I, we both kind of stopped him right away. We said, look, you cannot do that. You cannot make comments like these. We live in Pakistan, so just to clarify to everyone so they know. But we were like, it doesn't matter. We do travel a bit. It doesn't matter where you live, whether you're saying it in public or you're talking about anything like that. First of all, it's not okay to talk about violence or be okay with the concept of hurting real people, even though he wasn't talking about anybody specifically. He was talking about, just generally making comments in general, as kids do. Because, of course, we're going to show them these things and we're going to glamorize all of it. But then if they mention it as, oh, how fun would it be if we could do this? How fun would it be if we could do that? But then it's like, oh, he has violent tendencies and he is this and he is that. And minors could get in trouble for it. So all of it is ridiculous. So we were explaining this to him, that you cannot say this in public. You cannot talk about it online. Even if you're they're not allowed to talk to strangers online. But even if you're talking to your friends, you have to be careful what you say, your words, all of those things. And that was interesting to me, that at this age, they're fed so much. Everything that has violence, that you could be holding a weapon and hurting the people that you don't like is glorified, is glamorized. All of this blood and gore is glamorized. You're a hero if you can, or really, really brave if you can hurt the enemy, right? But then when it comes to real life, even if you're a minor and you don't truly understand what it means to actually hurt another person, physically hurt, another person with any of these weapons, you can still be penalized for these crimes. So, where is that freedom of speech and expression? And I am not saying that it should be okay for these kids to do any of those things. It is not okay to speak about it in our house, regardless of that particular thing where it's not okay and the authorities and whatnot. It is not okay to even speak about these things. And this is the reason. This is exactly the reason. Because when you speak about these things, gradually, you get immune to this. It becomes okay. Slowly, ये चीजें आपके दिमाग में आसान होती जाती है. That's why my kids are not allowed to watch violent movies, violent shows, violent video games. I try to control it as much as we can. And hopefully we are controlling it. So as you said, what the Joffrey, freedom of speech is to protect what we don't want to protect, but we can't protect ourselves from it. We can't protect our values and the things that we want to, because we can't speak up about it. We can't say, look, this is not what, and that's what the argument that my kids came up with. What my kids said was, but I didn't mean it, but I can tell them this, but I can tell them that, but if it happens, if somebody says this and this, we're like, you know what, all of this, first of all, yeah, again, the argument that it is not okay to talk like that is another one. That's, not okay. But other than that, who's listening? Who cares what you meant and who you are as a person and what you wanted and what you didn't? Who cares about that these days, right? You do something at the age of 19, 20, and they're going to go back to your entire web history, every social media, and they're going to say, oh yeah, you've had these tendencies since you were like 8 years old. And, you've grown up in a household that lets you talk about these things or watch these things or what have you. So that's why it's important to know. All right, so again, all the violent movies I watched gave me every reason to why not to be violent. Yeah, I mean, I'm not blaming the movies and the shows. I am kind of, and we've done a whole thing on it. But yeah, I understand what you're saying. It's not always the movies and the shows, but I'm just making a point here that what we call what we think we have as our rights, freedom to express our opinions, freedom to say whatever we want, as long as we're not hurting anyone, and freedom to express ourselves as we want, as long as we are not hurting anyone. That's what we think, right? चाहे पाकिस्तान में है या अमेरिका में है, जहाँ पर भी है. That's really not the case. And I know we understand it in some way. Sorry, this keeps coming off. And I know we understand that in some ways, and in a lot of ways we think that हमारे साथ जो हो रहा है, that's illegal, right? But there's a lot of things that are at work here. Okay, so hi to everybody who's just joined in. Just go ahead and comment and ask your questions. I can see you, all of you. I just don't want to break my flow, because I forget things if I break my flow. So I do see you guys, and I'm going to acknowledge your presence as we go along, and not going to read everybody's name though. So there's Avan the Helpers, Hina, Gulshan, Nausheen, Jaffer. This is another reason I don't read, because I am so bad at Tabassum Idris. Thank you for being here. Welcome to give me your input, questions, comments, whatever. Everything is welcome. All right. So, what is meant by freedom of speech? Just in general. We're not talking about any particular country or any particular region or anything like that. Generally, when somebody says, okay, well, we want freedom to freedom of speech specifically. What is included in that? What do you want? What are you looking for in general? So the things that are included, obviously, first thing would be a person's opinion, their personal opinion, right? What is flowing through a person's head, just their particular opinion, their own ideas, what they come up with. Because opinions are things that maybe, things that you're growing up seeing, your family, and what you know from your environment. Those are, your opinions are made up of those things. Your ideas are your creative mind. Things that you are working on. It could be just something that you could be in construction, you can be an architect, you could be a writer, you could be, those ideas. Those also are part of free speech. I mean, they're also part of freedom of expression. They're also expression, but a lot of them are part of free speech. Because when you are talking, when you're telling people your ideas and you're speaking, turning them into your words, and at that time, like, it could be poetry, it could be ideas about how to manage certain things. If it's construction, you might be talking about where to put what and what to remove, what to construct there, what to, those kinds of things. So those are your ideas. So opinion and ideas, they sound similar, they could be, but they have a bit of a difference in those. See, the thing is, it's so hard to do these kinds of topics, and I love this topic, and I love talking about it because it is so important for us to be aware. And these topics are so hard to do when you have a time constraint, like 30 minutes, an hour, because there's so much to cover in this. And so yeah, I'll do a workshop on this, or maybe like a whole course, and I would let me know if any of you, after this thing is over, let me know if any of you are interested. Because there's so much to cover that we're not going to be able to, might touch on it, but not be able to cover. So then there's spoken word and written word. And again, this might not be your spoken. So we talked about your opinions and your ideas, and now we're talking about written word and spoken word. You could be relating somebody else's spoken and written word that you agree with or you disagree with. But hi, Sonia, good to have you here. So, and a lot of other people joined. So, thanks for being here. Who was Hira, Jimmy, Kiran, Jaffrey, Verda, all of you. So, hello to all of you. And symbolic, again, symbolic words, performances, protests, all of those things, again, something that's read. So mostly things that are coming out of, coming out of your words, coming out of your, the brain that's relating things from your mouth, I would say. And it doesn't always have to be your word. I mean, your own word. But most of the time, it is, it could be your ideas. A lot of those things can be your idea. So that's freedom of speech. When you're able to say whatever you want freely. Right? So what is meant by, so we talked about these things are considered speech, right? And then we just said, when you're able to say these things freely, that's freedom of speech. Now let's go in detail of what is meant by be able to say freely, because that's a very important bit there, right? So being able to say it freely means that if you are not causing anybody harm, and if you're not harming public property or any individual's property, and not harming individuals or even yourself in any way, then you should not be, I'm not going to say can't be right now, you should not be stopped or, taken to jail, taken into custody, arrested in any way. That would be freedom of speech in very simple layman terms. And right now we're not going to get too technical. Meaning if you go out and you quietly stand there with a card saying, something terrible about the government, you should be allowed to, because you're not hurting anybody, you're not destroying any property, no matter what country. Right now we're not going into what country's law allows what, just generally anywhere in the world. You should be. That is what freedom of speech would say on a very basic level. You can stand anywhere and you can hold that card, and that is your own opinion. It is written, like we saw here. It is a written word, your opinion. You can be standing there, whether it's one person or 5 people. If you are standing there quietly, no matter how against it is, against politically against the government or against a person in the government, you should not be arrested or told to leave, or any force should not be applied on you, because आप कुछ गलत नहीं कर रहे, according to the idea of freedom of speech. Now let's go to what is freedom of expression, because it's similar, but इसमें कुछ चीजें इधर उधर add हो जाती हैं. This is a little bit more, includes a bit more political angle. Freedom of speech में भी है, लेकिन expression में, like if you are, your views on religion, politics, because वो थोड़ा सा फिर उसमें और expression होता है ना. It's not as much about what your opinion is, because opinions आप freedom of speech में भी अपने words से दे सकते हैं, लेकिन expression में ये है कि you are a little bit more, you have more vigor, right? Like you are more expressive, if you will. Political, religious, other kinds of आजकल, if you want to talk about LGBTQ kind of so you have a different, okay. So, or the LGBTQ issues that we have right now, all of those would be freedom of expression. The way you choose to live your life, the way you choose to conduct your business, and the way you choose to be in your outward life is expression. So it's freedom of expression. And access to information is a part of it, whether it's online, in public. So the way you're accessing information, from where you're getting this information, and who is providing this information, all of these things are freedom of expression. So if you're being blocked from getting certain information, if you're not able to get the information or receive the information or put out the information the way you wanted to, or if your way of life is being hindered in any way, that is all part of freedom of expression, right? Part of the freedom of expression. So, for example, if I am, supporting a certain part in a democratic system, if I am supporting a particular democratic candidate, right, around election, or even not around election, on a normal day or whatever, and I choose to put stickers on me or wear a shirt or whatever, and I am in a certain place where this would not be okay, I should be able to walk freely through that area without being bothered or harassed in any way. And the police, the government, all of them should be on my side and protect me from it. Right? So these kinds of things are a part of freedom of expression. I can give you another very clear example of it. I'm going in that territory where be ready, you guys, because I'm going to say things. I'm just going to say things. When 9/11 happened, not just 9/11, starting from 9/11, I'm talking about September 11th, the attacks on the Twin Towers. Right after that, there was a whole thing. All Muslims were like, were just being looked at as terrorists. Everybody was talking about, अब जो terrorists की faces हैं, they're all everybody's saying they look like Muslims and they are from Muslim countries, or अब क्या होगा, अब हम कैसे, हमारे साथ क्या होगा, and everybody was reacting to us, public, क्योंकि एकदम से इतना हंगामा शुरू हो गया था. तो yeah, we were being considered, every Muslim is a terrorist. That was the general idea everywhere. So what started happening was a lot of people said, okay, Muslim men should start shaving their beards because that would make it easier for them to blend in within the public in the U.S., of course. And women need to take their scarves off, and it's okay, it's to protect their lives and whatnot. And whether you agree with the sentiment or not, or with this idea or not, is a different point. What's important is that our freedom of expression, freedom of speech was definitely being taken away, like completely being, like stifled. But freedom of expression, the way we dress, the way we carry ourselves. We couldn't pray in public. We couldn't go out the way we would before. We had to be very careful on how we dressed. We still wore our scarves, but we couldn't wear any long dresses, anything that resembled our country's, dress and our country's style of, dressing, because we had to look more American or white American, I don't know. So that's kind of taking away a person's or a whole people's freedom of expression. So freedom of expression includes views on politics, religion, any expression that may or may not be received favorably by the public or the government, access to information. So right now we're talking about the media, we're talking about the internet, we're talking about a person, public, government, online, any type of access. So these are all things that are important to remember, because later on we will see them happening practically. I gave you an example from way back when, but we're gonna get closer, much closer to home. Now let's talk about, when we say practically, we kind of just assume that we have freedom of speech, we have freedom of expression, we have all the freedoms. So we can just do and say whatever we want, and we're free. We can do that. Even if they arrest us, we can ask to let go, we can get a lawyer, and it's just, clear cut, simple. That's what we think, and it should be like that. Probably, right? It should be like that. So let's look at that. First, I'm going to go to the U.S. because, we U.S. citizens, we like to believe that, I have freedom of speech and I can, so many things. We like to say so many things about that. So that's the First Amendment, or it talks about freedom. These kinds of freedoms. I'm just going to go ahead and say it so that it's clear, and we'll move on to Pakistan then, and I'll let to spend a little bit more time on Pakistan's constitution and what that says. In legal terms, there's 5 pillars of freedoms in the First Amendment. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of press, freedom to assembly, and freedom to petition. So we know what freedom of speeches, we know what freedom of religion and press and assembly are. They're all within freedom of expression. And we know that too. Freedom to petition is just to file a lawsuit or get a lawyer to help you with whatever rights you think are being taken away from you. And over there, government will provide you a lawyer if you can't afford one, if you think this is a legitimate case against the government or the country or the city, if some of your rights have been taken away. So it's clear cut, right? But it's not really. Like I gave you that example of, in a long time from now in the 2000s. And even now, we're seeing this all over. We're seeing this all over the news, all over the US. And actually, we're seeing it less because we're not getting it from the news channels. We're getting it from people who are actually going through it. That, people are protesting something that they feel that they need to stand up for, that they feel shouldn't be happening. So they're just trying to make their government and people they think are in charge make them aware and trying to make their voices heard. And they're ending up in jail for that. They're not being violent. They're in most places, of course, some places they do get violent, but not in terms of hurting people. It's just property damage here and there. They don't hurt people. They don't get violent to the extent of hurting individuals. That kind of thing doesn't happen. But most of the time, even that doesn't happen. But they still get arrested. They still, have the risk of losing their careers, their academic careers and their professional careers. So none of these rights are being fulfilled. And news media does not cover it. The regular media doesn't cover it. It's just the public, other people watching them, their own friends and families watching it. And, faculty who kind of feels empathy for them puts it on social media. So if we didn't have social media, this wouldn't even get out. Nobody would know. Like nobody knew in the 2000s or the 90s or even before that when these kinds of things happened. And they happened a lot. And that's not to say that social media has slowed it down. It has not. This is happening constantly. And we know that. We know that social media has maybe made more people aware, for sure. There's definitely more awareness and definitely more people are coming out and trying to help. But the people who are doing all this, committing all these crimes, people who were terrorists before are still the terrorists. It's just the narrative itself is changing. But the people who were in power then are in power now, and they're still using their power the same way. Hopefully in the long run, things will be different. So far, they're not. So the Pakistan Constitution, Article 19. Where did that page go? Hang on. I'm sorry. I feel like I took it out and maybe I wrote it on the feed. I apologize. This is what happens when you get old. Here it is. Found it. Okay. So here's the passage that talks about, this is Article 19. Freedom of speech. Every citizen shall have the right to freedom of speech and expression, and there shall be freedom of the press, subject to any reasonable restriction. Now, please remember that part. It said subject to any reasonable restriction. Any reasonable restrictions imposed by law in the interest of interest of glory of Islam, or the integrity, security, or defense of Pakistan, and in any part thereof, friendly relations with foreign states. So I'm going to go over it again and explain this to you. Public order, decency, or morality, or in relation to contempt of court, commission of, or incitement to an offense. So Pakistan doesn't just kind of, and First Amendment has other things related to it too in the US. Of course, this is not just like freedom to everybody for everything, but Pakistan kind of makes it because they don't have the religion. In the US, they're not counting on religion, and they're not counting on the basis of, they do have contempt of court for sure. But they don't have to kneel down to any country, so they don't have that. And so there are a few things that we have added here. So the first thing is that we have freedom of speech and freedom of expression, but there are reasonable restrictions imposed. So the reasonable restrictions means that the person who is assessing the situation, whoever it may be, mostly law, courts, judge, whoever, or the person at the scene, like police officers or whoever it may be, can decide in some circumstances how much freedom they will be given. And then the law will be, of course, it will depend, the freedom of expression and speech will have to be imposed in the interest of the glory of Islam and the integrity and security of, in defense of Pakistan. So Pakistan is not like US or the other countries. We were built on a certain principles. And yeah, I understand that we should be able to criticize our country. We should definitely be. How much of that is okay and how much of that is not okay, that's an opinion. Should that be in our constitution? We'll get into that in a minute, but that's what this is saying, that we cannot, that it depends on how much you can speak about the country, how negatively you can speak about the country, or if you would be penalized for it. And then we cannot speak about, freedom of speech is kind of, again, on the government and the law's discretion, कि हम कितना अपने जो जिनसे हमारा relationship है जिन countries से, foreign relationship, उनके बारे में हम कितनी बात कर सकते हैं, कितनी नहीं कर सकते. Like again, freedom of speech and expression is, again, on the law's discretion, कि हम अपने foreign relations जिन countries से हैं उनके बारे में कितनी हम बात कर सकते हैं. Again, contempt of court, that's not allowed. You can't be in contempt of court. Commission of or incitement to an offense. Incitement to an offense. Incitement is when you encourage somebody to commit a crime. So that makes sense. That's also a law in the US and other countries as well. Incitement to an offense is something like, if I made a speech here and I convinced you guys, and I was super motivational, and I convinced you guys to go rob a bank, and I just sat here, you guys went in the morning and did some, terrible things. And I said, I don't have anything to do with it. I wasn't there. Why would you blame me? But it was up me who convinced you guys. You guys had no plans of getting up in the morning and doing, putting on some ski masks and doing anything of that sort. So who would be to blame? Yeah, you guys, because you guys are adults, right? I'm hoping. And you guys put, physically put on whatever you put on and grabbed whatever you grabbed to go and did whatever you did. But I convinced you. I made the whole plan. I told you when, where, how, which area, where, all of those details. So I'm a part of it. So I incited you to commit that crime. So that's what's meant by, what was the word? incitement to an offense. So that's your free speech. So my free speech, that I'm just talking, you can't take away my free speech. I can say whatever I want. I can talk about whatever I want. So that's not free speech. That is me inciting you to commit an offense. So that's a different thing. So that's where your free speech gets hindered. Now, let's talk about how all of these things make sense and how all of these things don't make sense. Because a lot of times we take religion and we misuse it, right? Everything can be misused. Everything can be used in a positive way, because restrictions are important everywhere. Boundaries are important everywhere. Because whether you have boundaries or not, people misuse situations and people misuse, what's written in the law and what's written where, and it's not applied the way it's used to. For example, I was talking about incitement, and I don't know how many of you are familiar with what's been happening past 4 or 5 years in the U.S., but President Trump words. It's almost 11 p.m. But President Trump, he when he was president, during that time he some Twitter message or something like that, and he I'm sure you've heard of it. If not, please Google it. I'm not going to go in detail. He encouraged his followers to attack one of the buildings and one of in the U.S., and it was a whole thing. And then he said I had nothing to do with it, even though he encouraged the people to go do it, and everybody was saying, and he said he would join them. He said, I will be there and I'm going to come, and I'm so proud of everybody who's doing this, and it was a whole thing. And he just completely later on, when he was asked about it, that you were the one who encouraged your followers, your voters to go and attack and do all those things. And he just completely said, no, I had nothing to do with it. I didn't say anything. I didn't encourage them. I never said I was going to be there, even though there are messages and recordings and all of that of him saying that he would be there. And then praising them later on, saying that he's proud of them for doing what they did. Completely denied all of it. But this is incitement to an offense, right? And that's a part of their law too. And nobody did anything about it. Nobody ever, nothing, he was not convicted. Nothing happened to him. He's completely fine. And he's running for president again. And most likely he will win. So, these things happen all the time. These things get just, depending on how powerful you are, depending on how much money you have, and how many connections you have. This is a big one, right? This is a huge example. But this even happens to on a lower degree as well. So coming back to Pakistan, this thing that we're saying, that these things get muddled up and we misuse certain laws and certain situations a lot. In Pakistan, this happens. Okay, so we're gonna it happens in Pakistan as well. And we're going to get to one of the laws when it comes to religion in just a minute. But before, we're going to talk about a few things that are extremely important to talk about. See, the reason we're talking about this, the reason we're talking about free speech and free expression is not that we want complete freedom to say whatever we want, to do whatever we want. Because that's never the goal. And that is never good for any people, any country. Like I said, boundaries are important. But we need to have clear boundaries. In either country, I could have spoken about, many countries and researched on what their laws are about freedom of speech and freedom of expression and put them out there for you. But that wasn't the point. First of all, it was important to take out, to talk about laws in Pakistan, of course, because this is what we're trying to do right now, what I'm trying to talk about. Other countries, not so important. But what the point that we're here for is that we're not looking for total freedom to do anything we want, because that would be chaos, right? What we're looking for right now is that within our rights, within proper boundaries, because within boundaries, everything works perfectly fine. We can still have what we want. We can have our rights. We can give others their rights. And we can ask for what we want clearly and honestly and without fear. And be sure of, okay, this is what we're asking for, and this is our legal right. Even if others are not ready to give us those. But we know we're in the right. And there's no confusion about it. But we first have to be in the know, right? We have to know what our limits are, what our boundaries are. Because if we keep saying everything is free speech, freedom of expression, freedom of speech, we can go anywhere, we can do anything, we can say anything, then we can be hit back with a lot of things that may not be part of our rights. And then we may not even get the rights that we actually deserve. So it's important to be clear about these things. And the reason I'm talking about this and the reason I want all of you to know this is because it's time for us to ask for our rights. And if we're not clear on what those rights are, then we're going to be in a lot of trouble. And it's that time on what we should or should not ask for, and to have confusion in our mind and to think of, okay, this is the thing to ask for. No, this is it. That time is, I think it has to be over now. We have to be better than that. You guys are, most of you, I know that you guys are young, strong minds. You guys understand things. You guys are smarter than I am. I know that for sure. So I think it's time that you learned things in a way, understood things on a deeper level, because I know that all of you can. And I hope and wish that this would sink in that way. So let's talk about what we're looking for under Article 19, or what Pakistan should have under Article 19. What are our fundamental rights? Right now, the government that we have, what are we being deprived of? What, specifically, this is going to be freedom of speech, but also freedom of expression. How are we not getting our freedom of expression, and what we need to be asking for? So, internet service, that's a fundamental right, because that is how we get most of our information. Even like, news channels and all of that. We don't sit on the TV as much anymore and just, switch channels to get our, whether it's ARY or CNN, BBC, whatever it may be. We don't sit on TV. We mostly now go, scroll through our phones mostly. So, and internet is impossible these days. It's just in and out, right? We all know that. So that's, all blocks should be removed. Flow of communication should completely be restored. So that's a fundamental right of the people of Pakistan that is being denied to them. And the reason, if there was reasons such as lives were in danger, and that would also have to be for a very short period of time, quick as possible, we were under attack or something, which we're not. That's, again, like I said, freedom of expression. Surveillance. Limit or completely abandon the use of surveillance. I know that you've been hearing, and we all have been hearing, and we all know that there is surveillance is happening, and the government doesn't need a reason, doesn't need to tell the person. They can surveil anybody's phone, any electronic, any way they want. for any reason at all. And a lot of times I don't even have to tell the person the reason they're being surveilled. That's against freedom of speech, freedom of expression. That's a violation of all sorts of rights. And we're just talking about Article 19. There are a lot of other laws inside the Constitution that this goes against. And that we can demand. We can demand point blank. We can ask for this to be removed. Or at least limited to certain situations, certain people, certain, just limited. Again, this can be a whole course on which kind of situations this would be okay, and which kind of people, and which kind of, circumstances, and all of that. Repeal the use of encryption systems. Again, this falls into the same category, that we need to be able to get through the information. We need to be able to have clarity on what we're getting and where our information is. So all of that has to be super clear to us. Freedom of information in compliance with international standards. So our information should be, again, it says international standards. International standards these days are not so great either, but probably better than what we have. Information should be coming to us in the same way as it does to the rest of the world, and it should be going out in the same way as it does for the rest of the world. And because of the internet situation in Pakistan, that's not happening. And for a lot of other reasons, for the way our government functions, and so many other reasons that we're not going to get into because of time, we need that to be happening. We need that to progress, for our progress to progress in the world. We need that for our economy. We need that for understanding of a lot of other situations in the world. And even if all of that didn't matter, we just need that because this is our basic right. Because this is our liberty. This is our freedom of expression. This is our freedom to know things, to know what's happening in the world the second it happens, or just to inform people of what's happening with us the second it happens, because the world needs to know what's happening with us. And Femra needs to be regulated. Again, it comes back to communication and how the media and the communication centers are. And I'm a journalist, and I know how these things function, and how journalists have been treated, and how much danger everybody has been in, and journalists specifically, like an anchor or a host says one thing against the government or against any person that they shouldn't talk about. And shouldn't means, you know what that means, right? I mean, anywhere in the world right now, no matter where you are in the world, you know what it means to say anything negative about anyone. You shouldn't. Powers that be, you won't find that person. No, they get attacked by a bear somewhere, right? It's random things, but you won't find them again. So these kinds of things shouldn't be happening. And so Femra should be regulated. Their codes should be updated, and everything that should happen, and we need to make sure that it happens. Because who's going to make sure? Because these rich people, these politicians, these people that are in power or have the money, not just the faces that we see on TV all the time, the politicians, not them, but they're bigger and badder people on top of them even. So we need to speak up. We need to do our part. We need to start writing to our government officials, our councillors, our tehsildar, whoever we can reach. We need to start going to their offices and we need to use our freedom of speech and our freedom of expression. But we first need to be very, very sure of how to use it. Now I want to talk about, and if you want details on all of these things and the list of, and I hope you wrote these down because it's, not a lot of these things. There are just a few. But if you need a list, I can give you a list, and I can give you a list of the things that we can do practically to change certain things. Because change is not going to come from anywhere else. Because everywhere else is the same. Whether it's a third world country, second world, first world, beyond, wherever, it's all the same. No one's looking at us and saying, oh, we got to go help. Everybody has their own problems. Sorry, I froze for a minute. So what we need to understand in this situation, I hope you guys can still see me and hear me. Let me know if I'm frozen for anyone or if you can't see me or whatever. So what we need to understand is the world is getting, even though it's huge, it's getting more and more suffocating, smaller and smaller. And it's getting harder and harder to breathe. Metaphorically and, practically. And our problems are not going to go away by us just sitting around and talking about it. And it's dangerous, but it's dangerous right now too. So if we're in trouble either way, why not try to make things better while being in trouble? That's been my philosophy. I've been in lots of dangerous situations, and I'm still here to tell the tale. And I will be in other dangerous situations. And whenever we're talking about dangerous, quote-unquote dangerous situations and political situations and whatnot, and when we are trying to, for example, if we're raising money for Palestine, or if we're doing some kind of other, awareness type thing, a lot of people have told me, what I like the most about what you do is that you don't talk about the politics of it. You're just helping. It's just a humanitarian effort. And this is one example. There's a lot of other things. We've done things for Afghanistan. We've done things for other countries or other projects within Pakistan. And everybody's like, this is not political. You're helping women in Pakistan, needy women, and you're not making it about politics that, your government or will government. And we really like that about your organization or you guys or whatever. And it's interesting because we or me or our organization, we're not shying away from the politics of it. It's just by chance that we focus on the humanity, because right now people are suffering so much that politics are at the back end of it right now, because it is so bad that human beings matter more. But let me be very honest with you. Politics is not taking a back seat. It is other humans who put these innocent people in this situation, and they need to be called out, and they need to be told to change what they're doing or stop. So this is not about, we don't want to get into the politics because it's too scary, because we might get arrested or somebody might get hurt or whatever. That's never the idea when we are working on any project like that. Because we know our freedom of speech or freedom of expression has boundaries, and we make sure to not cross those. And we know that even if we're not crossing those boundaries, we may still have some backlash, but we will make sure that we're on the right side of this and we are careful, but we will not back away from it just because we are scared. And I'm not saying that we will not be scared, because of course that's human nature to be scared, and it's okay to be scared. But to run away from the truth and from trying to help and to change things for others and for yourself within your own capabilities, that's cowardice, and that's not something that any of us want to do, and I know you don't either. Right? That's not something we do. And if we are so proud of the freedom of speech and freedom of expression that we all have and that we all should use, then start there. Start with people who are dying of hunger in your own country, maybe just a few blocks away from you. Forget different countries. Start with that. Right? Call out the people in your government, in your tehsildar, your counselor, your, governor, whatever. Call those people out. It doesn't have to be a fight. It could be a letter. It could be a phone call. It could be a visit, a friendly visit to remind them, okay, this is what's happening. How do we fix it? I want to help you. That's exercising your freedom of speech and freedom of expression. Sometimes it goes down really well. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you end up being in somebody's little corner box somewhere where they're like, keep an eye on this person. But do something. And then, move up. Donate here, donate there. Call the person in a different country because you want to help. Or give to another country or whatever. But if you're not going to try, then don't complain that you don't have enough freedom. Because you haven't even used a little bit of what you already have. So that was my bit of complaining. And I'm not saying by any means that I am using every freedoms that I have or doing enough. I'm not doing enough at all. But we all need to do more, way, way more. And nobody's coming to help us. Everybody has their own problems. Look around. Look at what people are doing. Look at how much everyone in every country is struggling for these causes, for other people, not for themselves even, for other people. We can at least struggle for ourselves, right? I hope I haven't lost you in my lecture. That got a little heavy. All right, so let's go to, we were talking about boundaries, and let me know if you guys are still awake. Or if you're falling asleep, let me know. I can, So it's not going to be too long. From now, I'm going to try to, all these pages they're just mine. Okay. My notes, not going to be that long for you. Inshallah. Make it quick. So we're talking about boundaries, and we were talking about how not everything applies as it is. And boundaries are good. Here's why boundaries are good. Because you cannot apply everything as it is, and you shouldn't. And we gave some examples from the US. Let's talk about Pakistan and how we kind of sort of in and out of the boundaries. We're talking about religion, and we talked about how interpreting boundaries in terms of religion. So, and you would say it would be very clear. Anything that is, out of Islam's bounds would just be not okay. And anything that's inside Islam's bound is okay. So that's pretty clear when it comes to free speech. We don't insult anything that has to do with our religion. We don't insult anything that anybody who is, respected in our religion. And that's it. Very clear. But then we have so many sects. And then we live with a lot of non-Muslims in our country. And then we all are very familiar with the blasphemy law. And there's so much poured into it. Right? So then that creates a lot of confusion. So much hatred poured into it. So many boundaries crossed. So many issues, so many emotions poured into it. You can't say anything negative about it, but then you can't be positive about it. And this is not my opinion. I'm just telling you general, the polarization that exists about this law. So here's what I want to say about this. if you go through just, in general, in terms of the Constitution, you don't find any hard and fast written solid law that this is what should happen if somebody says something about the Prophet, peace be upon him, that they should be executed. There's a lot of different things in different places. You take them to this person, or you take them to the jirga, and this place has their own laws, and this place, different things in different places. The Constitution, again, has that big free area, respect of religion and respect of this. However, we have to then make judgment calls, right? And then we have to look at the religion as a whole on how, if we're looking at the religion, then we have to look at the religion. And the first thing we have to do is we have to look at how the Prophet himself, peace be upon him, handled this situation. So our first constitution is the Quran. If we're saying that Islam is going to be the supreme law in the country, so then our first constitution is the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet. So right? So that's our first guide. If we're living in Pakistan and that is our constitution. So where does it say in the Quran or the life of the Prophet that it is okay to murder somebody, not take them to court, process them, and then punish them accordingly? That's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about murdering somebody in cold blood. Where does it say that that is okay? Or beating them to a pulp, or punishing them on like a civilian punishing a person because they thought that that's what happened, that they disrespected the Prophet. Where does it say in the Quran, the seerah of the Prophet, the hadith, or any incident after the Prophet in the Sahaba or anywhere else close to the history of the Prophet? Where does it say that that happened and that was condoned by the Prophet or his companions? You can't give me an incident of that sort. So if that's not a tradition or a law that exists in our religion, then how can we make it a part of our constitution? Then how can our courts and our laws and anybody else decide that that is how it should be every single time, without hearing both sides and deciding if this was done with the intention of malice, of disrespect, of all of those things combined? It might have happened once or twice. People take that one example or two examples of somebody tried to poison and this and that and that. I'm not talking about somebody literally trying to, in person, at that time, trying to commit that action. At that time, it is different. I'm talking about somebody saying a word or putting something where it shouldn't be because they didn't know. Or in anger, exchanging words back and forth. Those situations are completely different. So in that, we should have a council of ulamas or Islamic Sharia council that we already have that exists. They should analyze the situation, remove everybody else, just have the two people that were involved in the incident. They should tell the people involved, the ulama, what happened, and then the ulama should talk to the judges, and combined they should make a decision. It shouldn't go to, you said something that was not appropriate and now you will be executed for it. It should be appropriate punishment so that these kind of things don't happen. Community service, or I don't know, a week in jail, if that's what you want to do, to remind people that we do not speak ill of people that are so revered that we have to say, peace be upon him and his family every time we say his name. That you do not speak ill of people like that. You just cannot. You don't have to like him, but I don't want to hear about it. You know, that's the idea, right? I don't want to hear about it. Keep your opinions to yourself. Not right. I don't want to. Just don't want to. So just to instill that idea, you can do things like that. But unless it's something, and also we don't know what that person who was in an emotional state heard and what was actually said. So there are so many unknowns. You can't just believe one person over the other. There's a lot of prejudices. There's a lot of, there's family issues. There's one-on-one issues. A person doesn't like another person. There's so much happening. There's discrimination. There's so many things happening. We need to not let all of these things get in the way. If we have freedom of speech and freedom of expression, other people do too, whether they're criminals or not. That's not for us to decide. So this blasphemy law doesn't come from our religion. It doesn't come from the Quran or from the Seerah of the Prophet. It comes from our extreme prejudice and extreme ignorance of our religion. It doesn't even come from the love of the Prophet. I'll be honest. It just comes from this ignorant place that we're in, and we get to control and almost belittle our non-Muslim countrymen. That's where it comes from. And when the Prophet ﷺ became the Prophet, he was saying something? The murder of Asma, bint Marwan by Umar bint Adil. Prophet forgave him because Asma was a blasphemous poetess. Okay. These examples are filled with I'm from the religion and Sira. No, it does not. The idea of executing people for blasphemy when it's not proven to be blasphemy. But the extrajudicial murder of Asma bint Marwan. Okay. No, it does not come from the religion and the Sira. And that's exactly what I said, that your one or two examples do not explain everything, and do not explain the constant executions and murders of people who may be innocent. This is a different situation, and I will definitely talk about this, and we will post it because I want to talk about it, and I want to talk about it in this context, because this is where it gets confusing, and this is where it gets that's why people tend to keep doing these things, because there are confusions, and there's a lot of narratives that go on with these kinds of things. It doesn't give us the right to just execute people without knowing exactly what they were doing and why they were doing these things. There's always a reason behind this. So we'll get to that. Definitely. We'll get to that. Okay. So and with the Prophet ﷺ, he was the biggest advocate of freedom of speech. And he was the biggest advocate of letting people say what they wanted to. He was the biggest advocate of freedom of speech. People said things about him. You think when he was living, when he was there, he became the Prophet. First of all, he freed slaves, right? The number of slaves that he freed, the number of okay, we're not going over so we're not going over these stories are different from from what we are talking about. These are not people who were killed because they were accused of just saying a bad word here and there or saying something that may or may not have been true. They were not executed by a mob of people. Understand the difference? They were not executed for, for just, they put something in the wrong place. And like I said, if there was an attack, or if there were, again, incitement to a crime, things are different. You are encouraging people to commit a crime. You are encouraging people to do something in a certain scenario. And this is not all of them are directly in that way where they were executed. So not everything that you're mentioning here is absolutely correct. And there are different narrations to it, and we will talk about it. Not all of them. There weren't as many as you're saying that there were. And the extremely religious people and non-religious people, ironically, do agree that religion allows this, but somehow normal Mandarin Muslims believe it doesn't come from religion. I'm not a modern Muslim. Believe me, I'm not a modern Muslim, but it does not come from religion. You are not allowed to execute people because they said a bad word to some person in your religion, the most important person in the religion. It is not okay to do that. Now, if somebody is planning an execution while the Prophet ﷺ is alive, Na'uzubillah, that is a different thing. A completely different thing. And even then, there were strategies, there were talks, there were considerations, it was dealt with in many different ways. It wasn't just like, oh yeah, grab the person and just off with their head. But we cannot get into that. We'll talk about it. Definitely we'll pick this up. We have to talk about this because this is really, really important. And this is actually important to know that there is a clear difference, but it didn't happen over a period of time. It wasn't the rule of law. It did not continue to happen. It is not the practice. It is not the sunnah of the Prophet. It is not the seerah of the Prophet. This is not something that was done. Or why didn't Allah just reveal an ayah and make it clear that this is what you do? Anytime somebody says something blasphemous, this is what you do. So this is not, okay, I'm not going to get into too much detail. I do understand where you're coming from. This comes from the love of the Prophet. For you, I get it, but this is not going to be. All right, we're gonna go into at some other time. Thank you for your opinion, though I appreciate it. Okay, so how was he one of the pioneers of free speech? Let's get into it. So he spoke the truth no matter what. Himself, he spoke the truth at the most dangerous time. He was talking to the most powerful entity in Makkah, in the Arab world at that time, around him, right? So he was talking to the richest, the most powerful, the Quraysh, and then his own family, which is part of the Quraysh. So he was basically surrounded, not just by the government, at that time, that clan was the government, the tribe, and then there were his family. So he was, he had no way to kind of maneuver, but he did still. He said, I don't want anything from you guys. I'm just going to stay on my truth, right? I'm going to stay where I am, and I'm going to say what's true to me. So he spoke the truth in front of power, outwardly, openly, behind closed doors, any way that you would expect him to, right? So free speech, freedom of expression, all of it. He did all of it. And he freed slaves, all those things that were a complete, it would turn you into a huge no-no You know, it's like you would stand out like a sore thumb. All those things he did, right? He did everything. Like, you know, these days, if you say, or it's always been like that. Some people who are supposed to be good people, you say they're good people, but you're going to get flagged as, no, you're actually the terrorist. How dare you? You know, that's what happens if you say, well, this is the new Palestine. This is the new Holocaust happening on them. And it's like, oh, how dare you? That's what happens in the West. Everybody's like, oh my God, how dare you? How absolutely dare you? Right? But that's not the case. So at that time, this is what was happening. The oppressed were somehow the bad guys. And we can imagine it's not always somehow. It's actually how it is. They're actually who they are and who they were. And that's what it was. And you know, when we're talking about, it's a good thing I wrote it down because I seem to forget everything. And I want to wrap up quickly here because I didn't realize it's 11:30 and I've been holding you guys for almost an hour. So freedom of expression. So freedom of expression is prayer and freeing slaves. The kind of things that he did was giving a safe place to people who had to leave their families or didn't have a place to go. The slaves who were freed, place to, you know, to gather, to live, to learn, stopping evil anywhere he saw. Like he practically just did it. And he got penalized for it. He was hurt for it. He was physically hurt for it. He was emotionally hurt for it by his own family. But he kept doing it. So you know what? And actually, you're right with the Jaffrey that religion does not equal free speech 100%. And we talked about it earlier, that there are boundaries. But that does not mean that that there's no freedom of speech or freedom of expression. Again, that is why we talked about the blasphemy laws, that there are limits to where you stop. And this doesn't just apply on Muslims or our country. It applies everywhere. There has to be boundaries. But that doesn't mean that there is no freedom. That doesn't mean that you don't exercise your freedom. When you are sure that you're, like I said, I've said all this, I'm not going to go repeat everything, but when you're sure you're on the right path, and that's why I'm giving the Prophet ﷺ's example, when you're sure you're on the right path, then you speak out for what you believe in. Then you can't be afraid that I might get hurt for it, or somebody might take me the wrong way, or somebody might think I'm the bad guy, because it doesn't matter. Because you have to try and change your situation and the situation the world's in, because that becomes your most important task. And then that's why you need to learn what are your limits and what are the freedoms that you have, so you know that you can stay within those and help. Because if you're helping the people around you, you're helping yourself. And that's what I say in the situation with Palestine or with Lebanon or with, whatever other country in the world, whether it's in Africa or it's in the Middle East or anywhere else in the world. What I say is that by helping them, we're helping ourselves. Because our countries that want to hurt the Muslims are situated in every region. And people who want to hurt us in Pakistan are not far from us. And they're very stable and they have help from all around the world. So we need to make ourselves strong and stable. Those of us who understand this need to be strong and stable. And need to start working on saving and protecting ourselves. And we need to start doing this fast. And this is not just things that I'm saying in passing. These are things that I actually know and understand, and I want you to understand. Because we can keep having these little squabbles about, but the politics, but if I say this, then another person, and it just goes. It doesn't matter. What matters is for us to know, for us to understand that we need to come out of all these little things. We need to come out of the little differences that we feel and just connect on what we need to do right now for ourselves, what we need to do to make the conditions in our country better, and what we need to do to help people outside of the country who are suffering. Because, Malcolm X, he said that if you're not careful, you guys know who Malcolm X is in the U.S. in the 60s. He was an activist, a Black American activist. He said that if you're not careful, the newspapers will have you believe that the oppressed is the evil, the aggressor, and the aggressor is the victim. And that's true right now too. Like anywhere you look on TV, anywhere you look on the news, at that time it was only newspapers, so, but in the media, that's true. Like any TV news station you open, it's like, Israel is attacking Hezbollah and so is attacking. It's all about the bad guys attacking the good guys. But we're hearing about how traumatized the bad guys are. And I heard the speech from Netanyahu about, the people of Lebanon, our war is not against you, it's against Hezbollah, and exact same words he uses for Gaza or used for, Gaza. Same exact words. They are using you as human shields. Please get out of the way and leave. And as soon as we have gotten all of them, we will leave your country. I mean, is the world that crazy and that stupid? But the world is not. The entire world knows what is happening. And it's happening over and over again. It happened in Gaza. It happened in the West Bank. It's happening in Lebanon. It's happening in Yemen. Israel is doing it. All the governments, powerful governments, are backing them. And the public knows now. And the public in the Western world is waking up and they're supporting them. The actual victims, they're supporting them. But the governments will have you believe, the powerful governments will have you believe that Israel is the victim. Even now, they will have you believe that Israel is the victim. So if you're not careful and you don't open your eyes, tomorrow it could be us. What is keeping them from blaming some crazy thing on us and having our neighbors pulling some crazy thing like that with us? This is not some far-off idea. So why not be ready and be on the right side of all of this? Right? So that is what I like to have the people that I'm talking to, that I'm preparing, that I'm helping. That is where I like to have them be. And that's what the Prophet ﷺ was doing when he was getting the new Muslims ready. He was giving them a safe space to learn, to understand, to get ready. And what were they getting ready for? I mean, it was on a smaller, space and a smaller level. They had enemies everywhere, right? Enemies were just coming at them. They were getting ready to, and they weren't silent. They were standing up. Everybody knew they were Muslims. Very few, of course, some were hiding because, their families and whatnot. But as a group, they were out there because they had to do the job of letting everybody know that they're Muslim. So they were out there. They were getting the message out. They were talking to other people. So what were they getting ready for? They were getting ready to spread this message. They were getting ready and they were using their right to free speech. They were using their right to freedom of expression. But again, we talk about boundaries. They had those boundaries in place. They were not disrespecting anybody. They were not hurting anybody's feelings. They were not, getting in physical brawls unless it was self-defense. So yes, boundaries are always important. And in any law, you'll find that too. Of course, including religions. So laws that are against freedom of speech, speech that incites illegal action. Again, we talked about it a couple of times. speech that violates intellectual property. If I own something, I wrote a speech or whatever, and then somebody else goes on and they say the exact same thing, and they don't say that it's from me, they just use it as their own, and they say, I came up with this idea, and then they, that wouldn't be okay. Yeah, if you say it and you say, I heard it from, even if you say I heard it from somewhere, that would be fine. Or if you say my name, that would be great. But if you even say, okay, I heard from somewhere, as long as people know that it's not your word and you don't imply that. Defamation, saying things about people that are not true, fraud, obscenity. You can file a case against anybody who has said things about you that are not true. Obscene things, people exposing themselves in public, or people. And for every country, what is exposure, what is obscene, how much a person should conceal with two people, what kind of closeness, or all of that is obscenity. And then pornography, child or otherwise, is also goes against freedom and speech laws, freedom and expression and speech laws. And so in these three, at least 2 or 3 things, obscene behavior, child and adult pornography, it depends on every country. Every country is different about how we apply it to our law, depending on religion, customs, all of those different things, circumstances, all of those different things. So, of course, in our country, it's a little bit more conservative, a lot more conservative, and in other countries, they'll find this more lenient, and, in Europe, certain countries are way more lenient, and so it's different for all countries. Fighting words, meaning if you say things like, I'm going to punch you in the face, or I'm going to come kill you, or, other just words like that would be. And one-on-one, if you're threatening people, not one-on-one, but like even if you're in a group, one-on-one or in groups, and you're threatening people and you're getting violent with words. And then physical threats, punching someone, hitting someone, even if it's not life-threatening, any kind of threatening, putting anybody else in a threatening situation, whether you meant to do it or not. You just can't do that. Now, a lot of times when we're talking about all these things and, we're discussing these things, a lot of times, what happens is why these wars happen, why these kinds of things happen, whether you're fighting for freedom for your own country, or you're fighting for just, like we said, a few rules you want to change around your own country, or a big war, complete haul over, in your country, or just a little, skirmish here and there, whatever it may be. Why is it important to really understand, for people who are in charge, for people who are in power, why is it important for them to understand that it's important for other people to be heard, for the little guy to be heard? And why is it important for you and me to come up again and again and speak about what our rights are, and what we need to do to get our rights, and what we need to do to make people understand that they need to get up and speak up with us? Why is it important? Because we'll live, and then we'll die, and we're okay, right? And if things get bad, then we'll just go to another country, right? We'll get visas, whatever. How long are we going to live? Like, how much life do we have left? We can have that attitude. But see, the problem with that attitude is that these kinds of things, when you're not getting enough in your life, or from your country, or from your whole situation, these kinds of things. Okay, so hello to everybody who's just joining. We're at the end of this. I just want to make a very quick last point, that why we need to stand up and why we need to ask for our rights. And fight for them in any way we can. And by fighting, I don't mean, come out of our houses with bats in our hands. I just mean whatever it takes, whether it's calling our respective government officials or writing letters or going to their offices, making nice with them, having a cup of tea, or standing outside their office with a placard, whatever it may be, as long as we're not crossing the boundary of our law and our religious, law, whatever religion that you may be. So, here's the reason for that. Here's the reason we need to keep pushing it and we need to keep trying again and again. Because when you have a certain purpose and you have certain things that are not working for you in your life, frustration happens and it keeps growing and growing and growing. And you may not know what that frustration is about because you may not understand it. And you may just think that, life is tough and today this happened and, then this happened and then that happened. And you may just keep going on with life thinking that. But a lot of times it's the complete quality of life that makes you that way. And if you say you're going to leave the country and you do leave the country, it's not being connected to your roots. Search it. That's the thing. Not being connected to your roots also makes you frustrated and also gives you a huge identity crisis. I can vouch for that and that's a whole other topic that we can talk about actually. That also gives you a lot of issues on a personal level. So if there's a whole generation growing up like that, you can imagine the kind of frustration and, the issues that would come up. So these issues, these problems that you need to be standing up for, that we need to be advocating for, that we need to be speaking for, whether they're from your own country, from other people's, whatever, they become ideologies. And it doesn't go away. So I can say right now, you know what, I'm not going to speak up for people in this country who are hungry or the kids who are not getting an education, or it's not my problem. My kids are getting an education. What's it to me? But then these kids at some point are going to be so frustrated and so angry that they will become a movement. Not this generation, not next generation, maybe some third, fourth generation. They will become a movement. And that movement will be against us, not against the government, not against whatever education system will be in place at that time. It will be against us. Because we didn't, or whoever is in the, upper middle class or whatever of that time, because we didn't do enough. And we didn't teach our kids, our generations, to do enough for them. Or do anything for them. And then that, of course, movement will not be easy to crush and that is what maybe our generations or even the government or people in charge will be trying to do, crush it. And people can be crushed. People can be pushed back. But ideologies, they can't be. Those don't go away. Maybe for the time being. लेकिन फिर अगर आप उसको दबा भी देना, वो दब जाती है थोड़ी देर के लिए. लेकिन फिर when it comes back up, it comes back up even stronger. So I'm not saying that that's going to happen to us, of course. I'm just saying कि जब भी कोई किसी को मुश्किल होती है, किसी के पास कोई परेशानी होती है, तो we should be helping. First of all, we need to help ourselves, of course. लेकिन उसके बाद other people as well. क्योंकि जब इस तरह की आइडियोलॉजीज को, इस तरह के प्रॉब्लम्स को दुनिया में दबाया जाता है, वो दबते नहीं है. And we know that. We've seen it. Look at Afghanistan. This is like a perfect example. How long have they been invaded for? कितने लोगों ने उनको इन्वेट किया है, कितनी दफ़ा इन्वेट किया है, कितनी different countries उनको इन्वेट किया है. So Britain, then Russia, USSR, now it's Russia. उसके बाद the US, none of them could, and it's not a rich country, it doesn't have a lot of money, it doesn't have a lot of resources, like, proper built resources, But they defeated all of them because it wasn't about the people. It's not about the money and the resources. It's about the ideology that they will fight for their country, no matter what. And they trained that, and I'm not going into good, whether it's good or bad. If we had time, I would. But they trained their youngest kid to believe in that we will fight for our country no matter what. And that's what they do. So nobody, the biggest powers in the world, have not. These powers have toppled running governments, but they have not been able to take down Afghanistan. And we can say the same thing about Gaza. Honestly, they've been trying for what, over 70 years? But they have not been able to destroy this whole place. They've been trying, and they have full support of the entire Western world. Up until this point, they had the full support, and they still have full support of 4 at least of the main countries. But they haven't been able to destroy it completely, because all of these people, everybody, they know it. They know that they are not giving up. So they think they've squashed all of the hope, but then it springs up. Because people can die, hope doesn't die. Ideas don't die. And you know, I'm sure that you guys are watching and you guys have connections and know people from Gaza. All of the young people, mashallah, it amazes me, are educated, and they want to keep learning. They want to keep educating themselves. I mean, they're talking about, hey, so, you know, what happens if we want to get into this college or that college, and can we learn online? And even now, when they barely have internet connection and they barely have any way of, you know, getting by, they want to continue their education. That is their concentration. They don't have food to eat, but they want to carry on their education. So that's the mindset. These are ideologies that you can't break. You can kill another 30,000 people. You can destroy the homes. But when people have these ideas that they want to live, they want to continue their life, they want to learn, how are you going to destroy that? You can't destroy that. So you squash it. It might settle down for a while, but it'll come back up. So you see, we need all of that. We need to understand all of that. And then we need to help all of them. And we need to have that kind of, you know, that kind of belief and that kind of faith in ourselves. And react that way to situations where it's like, I can do this. And I will let myself be in danger because I know the outcome one day is going to be great. Noam Chomsky, he's a writer, great author. He has amazing books and motivational speaker. He once said that Goebbels was in favor of free speech for views he liked. So was Stalin. If you are really in favor of free speech, then you are in favor of freedom of speech. I hope it makes sense to you. If you're in favor of free speech, then you're in favor of freedom. Not speech that you approve of, not ideas and opinions that you approve of. Control yourself when you hear an opinion that is different from yours. Control your emotions and let it happen. Let people talk. That's what we need. When somebody's expressing themselves, you don't appreciate it, let it happen. And I know when it comes to religion and it comes to other emotional things, whether it's us or anybody else, it's hard for all people involved to kind of stop ourselves. And we live in a world where you are only allowed to have an opinion if it matches my opinion. You're only allowed to have free expression if your expression is the same as my expression. If you're different, then it's not okay. And I cannot tell you how many times in my 40-some years, I say 40-some because from the time that I started wearing hijab, that I've heard things like, you don't have to do that here. You have the freedom to choose, and that you can take this off anytime you want. And that's not giving me the freedom to choose. That's taking away my freedom. They're constantly making me realize that I'm doing something different, when I gave them no indication in any way that I was being forced to do this. And but it happened, constantly happened. And it still does when I go to any country outside of, a non-Muslim country. They will at least once ask me, so who makes you do this? So your husband wants you to do this? So, was it a family thing? And, and sometimes they're honest questions, but most of the time they're just like, you don't have to over here. If you talk to your husband, it's like, what does that have to do with my husband? Why are we talking about him in the context of what I'm wearing? What is going on? So right there, my freedom of expression is taken away from me. Automatically assume that I don't have it with me, on me. So yeah, religion matters. Religion takes a lot of that, and we get very, very just uptight when it comes to that, because we don't like it that somebody else has a different way of living, different way of thinking, different way of doing things. And I don't know why that is. I don't know why that's been put in our heads, that you can't have different ways of doing things. You can't have different ways of living your life. And I'll say this and then I'll end it, that people who advocate for others living differently and doing things differently are the most rigid in that way. People who say, oh, we're woke and we're advocating for the transgender and we're advocating for the LGBTQ plus and all of those people, they are the most rigid people that I've ever seen and ever met. And I'll tell you, as a Muslim and as a person who believes in free speech so strongly, believes in freedom of expression, freedom of speech and all of those things, I believe in freedom to express yourself if you're a transgender person, and freedom for the LGBTQ community. I'm going to say that. I don't believe in transgender. Of course, that's a natural thing. It's fine. But I don't believe in, I don't approve of, gays and lesbians, only because homosexuality is not okay in Islam. But if you choose that way of life, I don't have a stake in it. If you are being hurt, if you don't feel safe, then it becomes my responsibility, my duty to protect you, to provide a safe space for you. If you need help, emotional, psychological help, then I will provide that for you to the best of my ability, or help you get that help in the best way possible. Because it is not my job to judge your lifestyle. It only means that I will not choose it for myself because my religion does not permit it. That is all that it means. That's it. Nothing more than that. My choices will not impact your freedom of speech or expression. And that's all. I will uphold your freedom to express yourself, to speak your truth however you want to. But I cannot impose it, in any way. And I cannot expect you to impose yours on me. So you can't tell me, but you have to accept what I think is right. But it is okay, it is okay, it is okay to be a homosexual. It is okay, it is okay. You can't say that to me, because I'll tell you every single time, no, it is not okay. But I will help you, I will protect you, I will meet with you as a normal person. We will talk, we'll talk about the world, we'll talk about religion, politics, everything. But I will not admit that it's okay. Because it's not okay to me, for me. So don't, put what you believe to be true on my head, because I will never believe it to be true. Just like I'm not going to sit here and constantly tell you what you're doing is wrong, what you're doing is wrong, what you're doing is wrong. Because there's no point in that. So that's the difference. Like tolerating people, developing tolerance for others' opinions, others' way of life. And just saying, nope, it's either my point of view or no point of view. That's hindering other people's freedom of speech and expression. And that's telling others that you are not accepted as you are. To be acceptable, you have to change. And that's like right back to middle school and high school. That's what we had to do. We had to change to be accepted. And that's what we're being asked to do now. You have to change yourself. You have to act not like yourself. You have to act like the cool kids. And then you will be accepted. So that's hindering our rights all the time. Unless I say, oh my God, you are so cool because you're homosexual. You're so cool because you're trigender, transgender, whatever fluid, whatever you are. Unless we accept it with whole heart excitement, we cannot be. We're some kind of very, very bad, in a very bad category of people. Why? If we're not hurting those people, and we're saying that we will protect you, we'll provide a safe space, and we're here for you, no harm should ever come to any individual for the way they choose to live, then why do we have to agree with every single opinion of a certain group? That goes against every rule of free speech, ever. I just said I'm going to take a minute, but I took way more than a minute. And thank you so much for being here. Thank you for a very, very fun and lively discussion. I really appreciated it. And I love it when you guys talk and, communicate. And we will definitely have a small session on this topic, on the blasphemy law and situation and how it used to, what it was and how it was, and we will go in detail because there are some details that are missing from what the Joffrey, missing from what you're saying, and we will analyze it properly. And I'll do it soon. I'll do it in 1 or 2 days, and we'll post it here because this is a very important topic. And I do appreciate the point of view that you're coming from. There is, I appreciate your point of view, but we have to talk about it. All right. I will see you guys later, and I do want to talk about this. There's so much detail in this this whole thing that we missed, and I know I lectured you guys, but these days I'm just feeling like we need to do more. And so have a good night, good morning, good evening, depending on where you are. We will see you next time for another episode of FemmeIcon, and sometime in the middle to talk about blasphemy laws in Pakistan and in history.